signs God is removing people from your life. Without doubt, we all dislike losing things which are dear to us. From small things like a collected marble, a seashell, a cufflink, a favorite pen, to larger things like a job, health, a car, or a pet. We feel sore when we lose a thing. And even worse, we usually would mourn when it is a person we lose, either through death or physical separation by distance or choice. And no one who faces this can be blamed, because we naturally will think about the memories we shared with such a person or a group of people, and it brings some degree of sadness. We reflect on the plans we had with these people and how it is no longer possible, and it hurts. We think about the fact that the love and friendship shared with these ones have been severed, and we feel deeply pained. It seems easier to cope with when we understand why certain people are no longer in our lives, but much more difficult when we do not see why they have to be away from us. It is easier to bear with the fact that a lover left us because they were interested in another than when we have tried to understand why they left and are left with more unanswered questions. It is easier to understand when a friend leaves due to a job far away or a missionary call, and to know they are doing well, to still have good communication with them, than when such type of bond is broken by issues we find trivial and cannot understand how such has severed the friendship. It is easier to understand when a child leaves for school than when they simply turn their backs on a parent. But how about when God is the one removing people from our lives? When in our lack of understanding of the why about people leaving our lives, God is the one working it all out. Do we even believe that God does this? And if we do we believe that it is for good? Romans 8 verse 28 says, "We are assured and know that, God being a partner in their labor, all things work together and are fitting into a plan, for good to and for those who love God and are called according to His design and purpose." Amplified Bible. Do we really believe this is true for all things? And if so, what are the signs? How do we know, so as to be encouraged, that God is working even this for our good? I do not refer to just death when I speak of God taking a person from our lives, and neither did Job, who spoke about all that he had lost, children, workers, wealth, and health, when he confessed in Job 1 verse 21, and said, "Naked, without possessions, came I into this world, from my mother's womb, and naked, without possessions, shall I depart. The Lord gave and the Lord has taken away, blessed, praised and magnified and worship, be the name of the Lord." Amplified Bible. For Job, it was a realization that God is sovereign and can choose to give or take. Sadly, many Christians say this, but hardly truly believe it. And this is probably the best place to start before we look at the signs of God's removal of a person from your life. You must understand that God is sovereign and wise. If you want a basic sign that God is removing a person or people from your life, just look around and see the sign of His sovereignty over all things, and consider the fact that one who is Lord over all of creation cannot be limited in His authority and rule to stop being sovereign in matters of your life. This is vital to note, because then we do not see the removal of people from our lives as a mistake. An understanding of God's sovereignty also helps us to trust Him when He takes away people from our lives, even though we do not understand it or get the full picture presently. Job had no idea of what the end was going to be like. He did not know what was at play in his life, nor why. But he rightly acknowledged God's authority to give and take. The irony is that many Christians confess to people when they feel blessed by them that God brought such a person their way, but they find it difficult to acknowledge that God can take a person away from their lives. What then are some of these signs? 1. Those people will complain about you a lot. One major sign that God is removing people from your life is that people who were before now friends and family, people who knew and understood you, will begin to complain about the progress being made in your life. They will also ask you questions on if you are being a true friend or love them genuinely. In short, rather than encouragement, there will be a lot of negative criticism. 2. They will hardly be supportive in your toughest moments. A true friend is one who stays with you through all seasons of life. As someone said, our truest friends are revealed in the light of our darkest hour, and this is so true. One proof that God is removing people from our lives is that we will discover that such people will not be around us when the going gets tough. We will instead find ourselves alone or only with a faithful few besides us. This is a sign that through our challenge, God is revealing who should not be in our lives. 3. You will find them uncomfortable with biblical counsel. Another major sign that God is removing people from your life is that those people will struggle to agree with advice you offer in truth and love. Advice offered from the Bible would be met with comments of you being too extreme, being too spiritual, and not understanding the reality of things. But because God desires you to be a person who will glorify Him at all times, He will remove people who refuse to listen to you. 4. You will experience peace and calm even with their going. A sign that God is the one removing people from your life is that you will experience peace and quiet even though they may treat you unfairly or distance themselves from you. Though you do not speak with them for a while, you will not feel like a piece of you is missing, neither will you struggle to find joy in each day. This might be a sign that God wants you to realize that these people are not indispensable in your life, but He is. 5. God will bring other people around you. One fact that cannot be ignored is that people are in our lives only for a time and season, and so are we in the lives of others. Sometimes, God ordains it to be for a long period, while for others it is only for a brief moment. When God is removing people from our lives, He often shows this to us by bringing other people into our lives, helping us in the next phase of life. This is a sure way to know that He is indeed working all things for your good. When we understand the signs and God's sovereignty in removing people from our lives, despite the pain, we will join Apostle Paul in Romans 11 verse 33 and say, "Oh, the depth of the riches and wisdom and knowledge of God! How unsearchable are His judgments and how inscrutable His ways." ESV.